Hello, wrestling friends. I'm Matt Kuhn, and that means you're listening to FTR with Dax Harwood. It's the first episode. Dax, we're here, and we're doing a podcast. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe there are actually people in the world that want to hear my dumbass speak about something. That's crazy to me. But the fan outpour has been awesome, man. Online, that was really cool.
It's amazing because we did really the softest launch ever. We talked about it on the last episode of Mr. Regal's podcast, and then I just tweeted a profile pic from the Twitter, which is FTR with Dax, and the thousands of followers, the thousands of reactions. Why do you think people are so interested in a Dax Harwood like you told me when we first started? You said no one cares what I think, but now that you see people care, why do you think people are so excited? Like, you've seen the reaction, it's been over the top.
Yeah, no idea. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think, and you see my dogs in the background. I just think that I don't think that I'm this big star or anything like that. I'm just a normal, everyday human being, and my life revolves around my family and wrestling, and so I'm just like everyone else. And I think maybe I appeal to the common person because I do work out, but I don't have a chiseled physique that an action hero would have. And, you hear my accent, and it's not the most eloquent speaker in the world. And I'm 5'10", not a very good looking guy. So I think that some people can associate with me and associate through me. And I don't know, maybe that appeals to them. And I'm glad it has.
I hear you say that a lot, like you're this guy with this muffin top, or you're not in good shape. And it's this unfair thing about TV and wrestling, right? Because maybe if you see you on TV, you might get an impression kind of like that. But in real life, dude, you're gigantic. You're gigantic, and you're in great shape. It must be really hard to get in that kind of shape where you can be a body guy or a guy that you can be aesthetically happy with on TV. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. And listen, I'm never going to be aesthetically happy with how I look. A few years ago, I was a super, super, super big kid. My peak weight was 282 pounds, and at a 5'10" on a 5'10" frame, that's not very good. And I just wasn't happy with my life then, and let things get out of control. And I just decided that I wanted to feel better. And so I worked out, or I started working out, started eating a little bit better. And, as disgusting as it sounds, I even hate saying it. I have the excess skin from all that weight. So honestly, dude, it doesn't matter how hard I work out, because I think you could ask the people that I've ridden the roads with, and obviously Cash, Elias Sampson, Chad Gable. I'm a freak when it comes to working out. I have to work out every day. I have to get it in, but it doesn't matter how hard I'm going to work out, because from the belly button to the waistline is never going to look incredible because of that excess skin. And it is something that I struggle with mentally all the time, but I just do the best that I can.
Well, we're going to do the best that we can. We're very excited to start this podcast, FTR with Dax. And we talked about it. We talked about names, and being in bands and being, having businesses. Coming up with a name is just the stupidest process. We throw a million things, and we went all the way around the block. We came up with FTR, and we decided, because of you, it stands for family, tequila, and wrestling.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Dax?
Three of my favorites. Obviously, number one is family, always going to be number one. I have a belief in a higher power, and if you don't, that's totally okay. I would never, ever preach to you, because I'm going to say shit, damn, fuck, all those words. I'm going to say them all. But I think my higher power, which is God, doesn't judge me because of that, and I could be wrong, and who knows. Also, I drink tequila. I have the max of 2 glasses a night with my family while I'm cooking. Tonight, I decided to save my glass for the podcast, just because sometimes when I drink tequila, I get loose lips, so it makes for better content. But then my wife and my daughter are my end all be all, man. That's the reason I do everything. I love wrestling. I have infinite amount of love for professional wrestling. It's been there for me when nothing else has, which in turn is the reason we have the wrestling part. But now I wrestle to provide, because if wrestling wasn't paying the bills, I wouldn't be doing it, because my number one goal is to take care of Finley and Maria. And so I am just fortunate, lucky, blessed, whatever you want to call it, to be able to do that through something that I absolutely and I'm enamored with, and that's professional wrestling. And now I get to talk to you and make a little bit of cash here, but also express my love for my family, for my tequila, which this is Cava de Ora, Extra Anejo.
I was going to ask what the tequila is of the day. So what is that, as someone who's drank tequila, but mostly just, your standard Cuervo kind of situation? What makes that tequila unique and delicious to you?
So this is, like I said, this is Cava de Ora, and it's an Extra Anejo. An Extra Anejo, the Anejo tequilas are aged in whiskey barrels from anywhere from 3 years to, or maybe it's a little bit less 3 years, but
it's got a brown color to it. I noticed that,
yes.
And that's from the whiskey barrels, right?
Yep. And it can be aged for as long as you want. This particular one is aged for 3 years. It's very, very smooth, almost a sweet caramel taste to it, because it's aged so long in the whiskey barrels. And some of those tequilas you were talking about, the Cuervo, which is fine, but they have an extra bite to them, and that's because the aging process is in this distilling process. Depends on the how they distill the tequila is not as refined as some of the others. So that's why, my vices are coffee and tequila, and I just enjoy the taste of tequila. I don't drink to get drunk. I drink because I enjoy the feeling that I get when I'm drinking and cooking with my wife, or just sitting on our front porch and talking. And I enjoy the taste, and that's it. And that one, like I said, Extra Anejo, aged for longer than normal Anejos, but it's an incredible one.
And before we get to the topic of the day, I do want to revisit something you said. You said 2 glasses, you do 2 glasses max. Now, I have witnessed in person what a Dax glass of tequila looks like. And there's variables in that, right? Not all glasses are created equal, right?
Right. Well, yes. When if I'm around, like last night, myself and Cash got me a, you can maybe, let me see which way to move. You see it right there, the Clase Azul.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. He got me that for a Christmas present yesterday. And, we're leaving for Mexico. We'll be in Mexico. We'll be in Mexico when this airs, and we'll be in Japan on January the 4th. So we won't be at Dynamite. So we wanted to celebrate the Christmas holiday with all of our friends. So my 2 glasses were a little heavy last night because I was with them. Tonight, it's just one. I saved it for you, and it was a very light pour, and now I'm ready to go.
Hey, so we are going to talk about some current stuff once in a while, but mostly stuff you've done, also classic content, stuff that you think people should see, stuff that influenced you. But I do want to talk a little bit about this, because as the show drops Thursday the 29th. So that means as you're listening, Dynamite was last night. You're not on Dynamite, but I think it's worth talking about the fact what you just said. You said we're going to Mexico to defend our AAA titles, and then we're going to Japan to defend our IWGP titles.
Yeah.
I've heard all those words together, Dax Harwood, but never in the same sentence. That's pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah. I'm either really stupid or really passionate, one of the two. So yeah, we'll leave. We're going to leave on the 27th of December for Mexico. We'll be down there a couple of days. I'll fly home for a day or two, then fly back out for Japan, and we'll do Wrestle Kingdom, and then I'll fly home and hopefully get a few days with the wife and family. But man, this is what we asked for. This is what we signed up for. And ultimately, this is why not why, but this is one of the reasons we left WWE, was because we wanted to do stuff like this. And
Right.
we knew to be the greatest tag team of all time, which is what I hope we can accomplish, even though I heard on a little interview where Dutch Mantel didn't like us calling ourselves that, but that's okay. To be able to be called the greatest of all time, we have to do this. And I will sacrifice my time with my family. So when it's all said and done and the history books are written, hopefully we can be up there with the greatest tag teams of all time.
Well, certainly with what's going on this week and the next week, you're wrestling in front of two of the great wrestling crowds and two of the great wrestling buildings and two of the great wrestling cities in the entire world, and defending the titles of those companies, which is an insanity type situation. But something else that's been insane is our topic today: CM Punk and AEW, his relationship with you and FTR. And it's something a lot of people have talked about. And like you said, when we kind of teased the show earlier, you take telling the truth very seriously. So, when you hear this show, your Dax Talk, you're going to hear the truth. So let's start with some truth. When did you first see CM Punk? Were you a fan of his before you met him?
Yeah, I was a fan. I was a fan of his work. If you're a professional wrestler, you have to be, look at his body of work he's had. I didn't see too much of his Ring of Honor stuff because at that time I was, traveling around on the independent circuit myself, and getting a hold of some of the Ring of Honor stuff was a little difficult. But watching him in WWE, he had something. He had something about him that drew me to him. I remember watching I think it was a ladder match with him and Jeff Hardy, and he was sitting on top of the ladder after he won with the World Heavyweight title, and the Undertaker's bell tolled. And I just remember being so excited because this angle that he had just had with Jeff Hardy was incredible. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the storytelling. I loved the matches. I thought they were great.
It was a great angle with two perfect characters and two perfect people to play them, right?
Two polar opposites. I mean, the complete polar opposites. And then the Undertaker made his big return, and I was so hyped up to see CM Punk work with the Undertaker. And I think that's, I don't know. I saw him have a match. This is before all that. I saw him have a match with Viscera one time, Big Daddy V, and it was a really decent match. And I remember thinking, not to slight anybody, but Viscera's had some questionable matches and performances.
He's not somebody known for his work rate or his, that kind of thing. Memorable matches. He's known as a character. Right.
And Punk pulled a really good one out of him. And that's when I started taking notice. But yeah, all the other stuff he did, he had a match with, I think, Over the Limit, maybe with Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson. That was an incredible match. Then I think he had a series of matches with Bryan that were great. Obviously, his stuff with Cena, his match with Cena from Raw in 2013.
The one right before WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, I think it was February of 2013.
Where Cena busted out the Cena Kanrana. That was, what a match that was.
Yeah,
man. That was
pile
amazing,
driver on the stairs.
Yeah,
I thought that match was so incredible. And then he had before that, he had the killer match with Brock. And the storytelling and the pacing and the selling of that match, man, it just took my breath away. So yes, I've been a fan of his for a while.
I've always thought as a fan that match was my favorite Raw match of all time, and maybe my favorite John Cena match. I just think it's just incredible because it's like you guys. It's like FTR. You can see that sometimes you all go out with that chip on your shoulder, like the real life chip, and you're like, let me show what can happen. And those two guys were going, let me show The Rock what we can do.
Yeah, to correct you just a little bit, there's never not a chip on our shoulder. I think at least for me, I always feel like someone is against me in the business, and I always feel like I've got to show them up. But I think that also that's the reason I've been allowed to have the reputation that I have as far as the wrestling matches are concerned.
And it's something that you and CM Punk have in common because he's that same way as well. Now, Did you meet him? Did you know him at all before he joined AEW?
So we met one time, and this was in FCW when I first started. And I remember Joey Mercury. I brought my huge book of old wrestling trading cards, and he wanted to see him. And so I brought him in that day, and Punk had just happened to come in that day, and he looked through them. And I mean, we exchanged hellos, but other than that, nothing. The first official meeting we had, I guess, was when he came to AEW.
Wow, that's really great because a lot of us don't know that. Like, I didn't know that. It seemed like you guys have been buddies, but you forged that relationship in AEW.
Yeah, and at first, man, I was I don't know if I was a huge fan of him coming into our company because I knew he'd bring more eyeballs to our company. I knew he would put a different kind of perspective on AEW. So I was very excited about that. But the things that I'd heard, I was not very excited about that because I'm not a person to back down from anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't back down. And so whenever me and Cash, whenever the first day we were going to be in the backstage with him, I told Cash, I said, if this motherfucker says something to me about the way I'm dressed, because I was expecting him to say, oh, you have to abide by dress code. If he says something about the way I'm dressed, we're going to have a problem. And I went into the building thinking that. So I already had this preconceived notion of what was going to happen and how I was going to, perceive him. And it was the complete total opposite, man.
Isn't it crazy when you have a preconceived notion of usually when you do, you're wrong, right?
Right. Yes.
And so you heard CM Punk was to come in the company. You were excited for AEW. You thought it was good, but you were a little worried about the culture backstage. And that's the thing I was curious about. I was thinking today, a lot's been made of the backstage politics in wrestling over the years. This podcast industry has been completely built on it, right? And I was wondering, does AEW have less of a culture, not in a good or bad way, but in a quantity way, because you guys get flown in for one show a week as opposed to doing a bunch of shows and being on the road together? Is it less political or is it harder because there's less communication?
So I don't think there's less communication than, and let's just say we're comparing to WWE. I don't think there's less communication than with WWE. I think that there have been times where some of the wrestlers have leaked that to the dirt sheets for whatever reason, but they've never experienced wrestling outside of independence. And I have in WWE, and in WWE, there was, at the time when I was there, could have changed now, but there was no communication at all. Even up until the start time of the show, communication was very, hit or miss. So I don't think there's a lack of communication there. As far as politics go, I don't. The political game in WWE was not bad at all. The boys got along great. I think the girls got along great as well. And there was no real political maneuvering there in WWE. I think the problems were between the office and the boys, and that's what the problems were. In AEW, I don't think there's a lot of politics either, to be honest. The boys have a male locker room, and the people who share that male locker room share a bond and share a kinship. And every single Wednesday, I think you could ask anybody, every single Wednesday, myself and Cash, we bring a bottle of tequila and we have drinks with the guys just to make that camaraderie even stronger and to make the kinship even stronger. So I don't think there's any political games as far as that goes. I think that when you're in a position of power, obviously, even when you're not in a position of power, you're always going to look out for your best interest because no one else is going to look out for your interest the way you are.
Sure, that's what you do too, right?
Right. Absolutely. But when you're in a position of power, you're allowed to look out for your best interest, and more often than not, you're allowed to get it. But again, playing politics, I don't know if that's what you call it, but when there is someone, let's say you, for example, as a as a music teacher, a music instructor, and you've got your own business and you're doing very well. Next door, another music instructor moves in, and he's, buy one get one free, or buy 3 sessions and get 3 free, and then he pulls away some of your talent, or some of your kids, but he's not as good. But no one really knows that he's not as good. Right. And so there's going to be that competition. And I feel like there's that competition. I'll just say it. There's that competition between us and the Young Bucks. I think it's a healthy thing, because that's why our 2022 was so great, because we didn't know what we were going to get. We didn't know what opportunities were to come our way. But we knew, and we had made a promise at the end of 2021 that whatever we got, we were going to kill it, and we were going to have fun doing it. And so, whenever you have competition, I guess some things could be misconstrued as political agendas, but more often than not, you're just trying to compete and be better than someone else.
Well, that brings us close to that big night in Chicago, promoted. Tony Khan was really coy and clever about it. He never said CM Punk, but he booked a building that only CM Punk could fill, right? It's kind of brilliant stuff. Did you get official word he was in, or did you just figure it out like the rest of us? When did you know for a fact he was in?
I knew for a fact that when he debuted, but I had heard, rumors, and the boys and the girls talk. So I'd heard rumors, and I'd hoped the rumors were true, because we needed him. This was a guy who left WWE, didn't want to go back necessarily. And if we could land him, we landed a huge superstar, maybe the biggest wrestling star in the world at the time. And he was someone that WWE couldn't get. And that, to me, made us stand out, so I was super excited.
Absolutely. And he debuts, packs the house August 20th, 2020, on the first dance event on Rampage, challenging Darby Allin. You said the boys talk, the people talk in the back. You said you had trepidation. Were there other people? It was a kind of a thing like, don't screw up this locker room, buddy. Like, we want you here, but was there a lot of worry about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure. A ton of guys were worried about that. But, that's human nature. When something is going good, you want it to continue to go good. And when someone new, listen, when me and Cash came into AEW, there weren't very many people that were happy to see us there, man. I'm just being blunt and honest with you. For example, he and I have talked about it, but Jack Perry was not happy to see us, because he thought that me and Cash were going to come in and change up his whole style and try to make him someone he's not. So it's not just CM Punk. It's just whenever you have harmony in a locker room and things are going well, change is kind of hard for people. So yeah, there were a lot of people that were worried about it.
Now, at the same time, you're kind of, this is, like I said, it was 2021, August 20th. Where was FTR at this time? How was FTR doing when CM Punk debuted?
Not well, not very well. We were in the middle of the Pinnacle, and I was not happy with some of the things that we were doing. I was not happy with our position on the card, which is okay. I don't know if I'll ever be satisfied with any of that. That's what makes me better, and it makes everyone better, but that you want more. So you're going to work hard for more and more and more and more. And then at the end of the day, when you're done with your career or done with whatever you're doing, you can look back and say, okay, man, I did all right. I did okay. But while I'm in it, I want to be the best. I want to be the absolute best that I can be. I want people to look at me in a certain light. And I wanted, obviously, my boss to look at me that way. I wanted the fans to look at me that way. And I just didn't feel like at that time we were being perceived that way. So I don't even think we were there that night. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think we were there.
But you saw it, and you saw the reaction. And of course, backstage, you saw what it did for the company, and everything is changing. You've got not just one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, but a guy that we thought was going to retire. He's coming back. And you guys in the Pinnacle, and you said we talked about topics for the show off the air, and you said, yeah, Pinnacle, we got to talk about that one. And we talked the other day, and you said Pinnacle with like a wink and a nod. And now you just said you weren't really happy with the Pinnacle. We're going to go deep dive into the Pinnacle at some point. Was it kind of being thrown into a faction where you were an afterthought as opposed to being kind of the featured tag team? Is that the main issue you had, or what was the problem with the Pinnacle for you?
Absolutely not. I was excited about this opportunity. I mean, to work with, the future of professional wrestling, MJF, to work with my buddy Sean Spears, to work with an incredible talent in Wardlow, who is another person who could be the present and the future of wrestling. Obviously, my best friend by my side and Tully Blanchard leading the ship. I was super excited about this because I as a big mark, I was thinking of Dangerous Alliance,
Absolutely.
And we started off great, man. The first week we were there, the second week was okay too, and then it just started. Things just started falling apart there, and he's my buddy now, but Max and our relationship started falling apart as well, which we'll get into all of that. But it just wasn't a fun time for me mentally. It wasn't and that's also when I started going through my struggles, but it wasn't a fun time for me mentally. I had a few injuries as well that I was working through that I didn't tell anybody about except for Cash. And I was just in a bad spot then.
So when did you connect interpersonally with CM Punk? You didn't work with him right away, and eventually you guys were kind of inseparable for a little bit. When did you must have started having conversations or talk about wrestling, or how did this personal relationship develop with a guy that people thought was going to be pretty hard to have a personal relationship with?
Yeah, we had a match with Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz, and he loved the match. And he told me he had been waiting to see us work live because he had seen us, before. And, we just kind of started talking about that. And obviously the love of Bret Hart came into play. And we're both enamored with him. We both think he's the greatest. And, whenever he knew coming in that he was going to eventually work with Max in an angle. And so he called all the guys in the Pinnacle in his locker room. And again, I said this before, his locker room door always open. You could walk in and walk out without knocking and say hello. He was incredible at that. But he brought us in his locker room and he sat everybody down and he said, we're all going to be working together soon. And I can't wait to work with you guys. I'm a fan of every single one of you. And I hope we can make a ton of money together, and I hope we can make a ton of money for this company. And he said, just to show you my appreciation, I have these for you. And he knew that most of us were coffee connoisseurs, or we loved coffee. And he had these gift cards for Starbucks with like $500 on each gift card. And he gave it to myself, Cash, Sean, Wardlow, and Max. And he said, I know this isn't much, but this is to show my appreciation for you guys allowing me to work with you. And that's kind of how things started rolling then.
Wow. That's a great thing. And he must have been that way with everybody. What you mentioned, and it's just one of 17,000 quotes that got picked up that you said in a half an hour conversation by wrestling news sites. You mentioned he's misunderstood. Was he misunderstood by people like right away backstage as well? Like, was that your relationship with him? Was it a unique one, or were there a lot of people who were like, "Wow, CM Punk's kind of the dude"?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were, like the latter of what you said. I think that they saw that he was either a different person than what he used to be, or the stories weren't necessarily true. And I said he was misunderstood, and I do believe he is misunderstood, but maybe he is too understood. Maybe the people understand him too much because, like I said, he's going to fight for what he believes is right. And if he's wrong about something, then he will go down in flames and he'll admit that he's wrong. But if he thinks he's right, he's going to fight for it. So, I think that's admirable. Some people may not.
Is that something you guys have in common? Is you guys are both hill to die on kind of guys?
Absolutely. And I had to learn the hard way, and Cash had to kind of coach me through that. I was going to die on every hill. every single heel. And and that, in WWE and AEW, even before that, man, you can ask my friends on the independent scene, the Dawson brothers who worked for NWA. You can ask those guys. I was the same way then because I was just so passionate. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. I was so passionate about wrestling, and I knew what I wanted to achieve in wrestling on the independent circuit in WWE and AEW. I knew what I wanted to achieve. I know what I want to achieve. But until I had this conversation with Cash, where he completely changed my mindset, I was going to die on every single heel because I thought that's what I had to do to show people that I was so passionate. I love this so much. And I was never going to take no for an answer for anything. But he told me, he taught me that there's sometimes that some of these heels aren't worth dying on. And I never thought about that. I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. Like, because this never happened, but just saying it, for example, because Tony said we couldn't wear yellow trunks, I should fight him on that? No, just don't do it. And then, when the time comes, when we haven't been on TV for 3 weeks, then you go fight for it. And so I'm still abrasive, and that's still a work in progress, and I'm still a work in progress, but I've gotten so much better at that. So I do think, like you said, I do think that that's what maybe drew us closer together, but it could have gone the other way. That could have drifted us even further apart because we're so, we're too much alike,
And that definitely can lead to that kind of thing, but you are alike and you got along pretty well. We're going to talk about a couple things that are difficult to talk about that a lot of people don't talk about and a lot of people have questions about. So we're going to get to it. Colt Cabana, Scott Colton. What do you have any kind of relationship with him at all? How well do you know him?
So I don't know Colt very well. The very first day we were in the company, I could be wrong. I just felt that Colt didn't like us. There were some people there that didn't like us, like I said. And I remember that he made fun of my accent the very first day. And I wasn't very happy with that because I take offense to that, and maybe I shouldn't. But if people knew my backstory and how hard I worked to get the education that I got, and real quick, I'll fill you in. I'll do a very short version of it. But I was in college. My mom and dad both lost their jobs within a month of each other. I had nobody to help me with rent or books or food or anything. So I had to work 3 jobs plus wrestling on the weekends, just so I could pay for my college. And I paid for my own college, and I got a degree in UNCW, in a bachelor's in English and a bachelor's in business communication. And it was all through my efforts. And if the people saw the sleepless nights that I had, the nights that I cried because I was worried that I wasn't going to get this, or the nights I had negative dollars in my bank account because I was paying for books or putting things on credit cards and stuff like that, like, I think maybe they could understand it then. But for him to make fun of my accent, because the connotation is if you're a Southerner, you're stupid, that bothers me, man. And maybe I shouldn't let it bother me. So that was the very first run-in I ever had with Colt. But other than that, I've never really had a conversation with him, never talked to him, nothing like that.
It's one of the things that is askew about the whole situation is that it's said that, CM Punk and Tony Khan both say that CM Punk never said Cabana can't be on the show. Cabana can't be on if I'm on. None of that. There was no quid pro quo like that. But Cabana was there, and then all of a sudden he wasn't there. Were people talking about what's going to happen with Colt when CM Punk gets there, or did people start talking at all when he stopped being on TV?
Absolutely not. No one said anything to me. I heard nothing. But when he first got there, no one said anything. And to be honest, dude, I really had no idea that there was any kind of problem between the two. I knew there were issues with the lawsuit with the doctor, but I had no idea the extent of the problems they may have had. And I never cared to ask because it's none of my business. And that kind of stuff I don't worry about. But no one ever said anything to me. And I say no one, Punk included, Colt included. They never mentioned any kind of ill feelings towards one another.
but there started to be some kind of, well, let's go to this. There started to be some kind of feeling among some people that Colt Cabana's not there, and CM Punk said it. For some reason or another, people thought that. He was on TV, and then all of a sudden he wasn't, and people know the history. But that's a part of the people backstage. Is there a divide in the locker room? Is there like certain people that hang out in one group and certain people that hang out in another group? How cliquish is it back there?
Honestly, like I told you, man, in the male locker room, we all get along. In our single male locker room, every single person gets along. And that's why I enjoy it so much. That's why I always, like I said, bring the tequila. Everybody in that male locker room gets along great. As far as divide goes, I mean, everyone has their friends and has the people that they like to hang out with, and that's fine. I mean, there are days I go in there and I don't speak to anybody but Cash, because I'm just, like I've told you before, I fly in on Wednesday morning because I spend every second I can with my wife and daughter. So I'll wake up at 4 a.m. on Wednesday morning and fly to TV. And at TV, I'm just completely dead. And then I have to pound caffeine just to be, hopefully be up for a match.
Right.
And then I fall asleep for a couple of hours, jump on the earliest flight back home until I can get home and see my family. And that's just me. As far as divide goes, I don't think there's a divide. I don't even think people consider anybody to be a clique. But like I said, in that male locker room, everyone gets along great.
Let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask because I'm curious. You keep saying in that male locker room, are there wrestlers who don't take part in the male locker room who are male wrestlers?
Yeah, of course. There are people that have their own locker rooms for sure. That's just where I spend the majority of my time, in the male locker room, which sounds weird for me to say out loud. But that's where I hang out. That's where my friends are. That's where my buddies are. And then after we're done wrestling, we all share a drink. Me and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but Orange Cassidy, we're good buddies, and we have a drink. Trent Beretta, same thing. Chuck, same thing. Obviously, Cash. We love the camaraderie of each other, and we love the locker room that we're in, and we make sure that everyone knows that.
Dude, it sounds like a fun time. It sounds like a good time. And CM Punk is there, and he's part of the good time. And meanwhile, things are kicking up in AEW. Things are changing. CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, boom, boom, boom. A lot of things happening.
Dude, what a time.
It was a time. It was like, wow, momentum shifting. What's going on? You're in your head. You're going through some struggles personally, and you're going through some struggles professionally. But at the time, you had to be thinking AEW is kind of catching fire right now.
I was so excited. I can't explain to you how excited I was. And man, if I knew how my 2022 was going to turn out, I would have been more excited. Never in a million years, did I think, especially looking back at the end of my WWE career and in the beginning of my AEW career, never did I think that I would share the ring with CM Punk or Bryan Danielson or fucking Sting, man. You know what I mean? Like, that's bucket list stuff.
Sting. God dang, man. What's going on?
That's a year ago, as we're recording right now, that was a year ago today, that we had the 6-man tag with Sting and Punk and Darby against myself, Max, and Cash. One of my favorite matches in the Greensboro Coliseum. And like, I would have never thought about that. And then, of course, as well, Adam Cole, got to work with him too. So I was so excited to get that talent in there, because there's some people, and all of us are, all wrestlers are, maybe, all humans, we're insecure. Wrestlers are insecure, especially when new talent come in who are big stars, and they say, "Oh my God, they're going to try to take our spot, or they're going to, they're going to take up all the TV time." I never thought that. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but Cash and I never talked about that, never thought about that. I think that we embraced that, because now we get the opportunity to hopefully, one, benefit from the eyeballs these guys are going to bring, but two, benefit from working with them and being able to show, world-class wrestling to the world. So we were super excited with that.
With what's going on AEW, and CM Punk is in there, you're going through your thing with the Pinnacle, but CM Punk is wrestling some matches. He debuts at All Out against Darby Allin, wrestles Powerhouse Hobbs, Daniel Garcia, Matt Sydal, Bobby Fish. Hey, let's talk about this. What do you think of Bobby Fish's kickout? Everybody talks about that, right? Because for those who don't remember, it was one of the strangest moments in wrestling history. Yeah. Bobby Fish wrestles CM Punk. Bobby Fish just gets to AEW. You know, people think a lot of him. But CM Punk is the guy with one of the most protected finishers in the history of wrestling. And Bobby Fish has said that he thought that he got the pinch, the Iggy, the signal to do something different. And he kicks out right at 3 after the GTS. What are your thoughts on that whole thing? And what were people saying backstage when that happened?
What I will say about that, there's a couple of things. One, I was never going to let this be known, but Bobby went on and he did an interview about it, and that's okay. He and I get along great. Bobby and I get along great. And before this and after this, we got along great. We talked about our families, his marriage. We talked about real estate investments and things like that. So we get along great. I just want to preface that before anybody finds a headline. But there was an issue that he and I had on live TV where I felt that he was taking advantage of me. And things got very, 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 very heated on stage. And I punched Kyle because I thought Kyle was getting involved as well. We got to the back. We had to be separated. But then, 30 minutes later, we apologized, we hugged, and we were good. So there's that.
Wait, so live TV, was this the NXT match against Undisputed Era?
No. This is an AEW.
Okay.
Yep. This is an AEW. The match with Undisputed Era, but beautifully. I loved that match. I loved working with those guys.
It's one of my favorite matches and a very underrated match. Yeah. And I always think about how the camera kind of missed the shot at the end. Because, right?
Yeah, I was very upset about that.
Because, guys, if you haven't seen it, the Undisputed Era have their Red Dragon, whatever you want to call the tag team, have this great finisher, the high-low finisher, right? And Dax knew, the character Dax, or Scott Dawson knew it was over, and he sacrificed himself to it. It was beautiful, dude. And the camera kind of caught it, but it could have been caught a lot better.
Yeah,
am I right?
A lot better. But I will say this, that was the first time NXT won the ratings war, so you're welcome. But as far as the kick out goes, I have been I've taken many pins in my career, obviously, and I have got the squeeze, and the squeeze to me means thank you. And that's what I think, and that's what I was taught. Maybe Bobby was taught different. I don't know. So those are my feelings on Bobby. Great guy to me. We get along personally. We had a little flare up where we threw hands, and we got over it just like men do and moved on.
So I guess we're going to talk about them a little bit in the future, and we're going to talk more about that because that is an interesting story. To be fair, in any world, would any other wrestler in the world think that grabbing the wrist means kick out of the GTS?
Well, there's one wrestler, Bobby, so who knows? He obviously thought that. So maybe. I mean, I'm just a small town Southern boy who worked with Ricky Morton and George South and all these guys, and that's just what I was taught.
Right.
Maybe they were taught something different. I mean, to be fair, the squeeze means a lot of different things. I would just never take it as, hey, kick out. That's just me.
As a fan, the only time I really detect it is the "I'm okay" squeeze.
It means a lot of different things, but those are some of the things, the mystique to the wrestling business I like to keep.
Well, good, because we need that as fans. And CM Punk's still wrestling. Like, he is just. That was a great thing. Was it surprising to you that he was taking such a full-time schedule, that he wasn't doing the Brock Lesnar schedule?
Dude, yes, and it sounds like I'm kissing his ass, but it was his idea to wrestle that much. He wasn't supposed to. He had a limited number of matches, but he just became enthralled in wrestling again, and he loved it so much. It was his idea. Like, I've told the story, and I will get to it, but it was his idea that night. He wasn't supposed to wrestle me. But yeah, he wanted to do it. He loved it. He still does.
And we're going to talk about that for sure in just a little bit. CM Punk, again, wrestling this full-time schedule, falling back in love with wrestling. So is that your estimation, is that this guy, he seemed okay without wrestling, but a guy who dedicated his whole life to it, to becoming CM Punk, there's no way he doesn't love it. Do you think he found his love for wrestling again? Wrestling all these guys, like I said, Powerhouse Hobbs, Bobby Fish, Eddie Kingston, QT Marshall, Lee Moriarty, Wardlow, Sean Spears. He's just Daniel Garcia. It was your observation that CM Punk fell back in love with wrestling in AEW?
No, I don't think he ever lost the love for it. I think that guys like us who love wrestling as much as we love wrestling never stop loving it. Sometimes you stop loving the feeling you get after wrestling, the day after, as I can speak to right now, because my back and ass is killing me. But I don't like Brett. I talk to Brett all the time. He still loves wrestling. He watched the match without me even having to ask. He watched the match with Claudio and I, and he sent me this long, detailed text message about, he put it over, but then he also talked about what he would have done and how he thought it could have been better. But he did that because he loved it. He did the same thing with my match with Bryan Danielson, the exact same thing, but he did it because he loved it. And, Brett hasn't really wrestled since 2000.
Right.
At the end of 99. So, guys like us never fall out of love. We just, we maybe get disenchanted at times, but never fall out of love.
Maybe you don't fall in love with wrestling, but fall out of love with the wrestling business, where the bad overcomes the good.
Yeah, I could see that. But, that, again, that's everyday life. People at home listening right now, the same thing. There's days that they can love going into their job, love the people they work with, and then there are days where they feel they've been taken advantage of, or they're not getting paid enough, or the boss is asking them to stay over and they're not getting paid overtime, and it's not fair. Like, it's human nature.
It absolutely is. And even as much as you love your job, every job has its ups and downs. And CM Punk had been out, he's back in, and he has just a bunch of singles matches, and his first tag team match is a 6-man. It's December 22nd, 2021, AEW Dynamite Holiday Bash. CM Punk teams with Darby Allin and Sting, and if you guys remember, what a great visual that was, them all wearing the face paint and everything, and they're taking on a tag team of Cash Wheeler, Dax Harwood, and MJF. You guys were still the Pinnacle at that point, is that correct?
Yep.
How did that match come together? When did you find out about it? And how did you feel about getting to wrestle with CM Punk?
This was a match pitched by Punk because we were in Greensboro Coliseum, and having Sting there, obviously, we wanted to bring that nostalgia feel. But also, I'm sure he enjoyed teaming with Sting, and that was a dream of his. He's a huge Sting fan. And then teaming with an up-and-comer like Darby, who is incredible, and knowing that myself and Cash would take care of him, we would take care of Sting, obviously take care of Darbs too, but he doesn't need to be taken care of. And then Max, the hottest heel on the show, it was, a recipe for some good shit, and it turned out to be some real good shit. We went 20-some minutes, I believe, and I just remember, we didn't call. I hate talking about this stuff, but they're on a podcast. I got to do it, I guess. We didn't call very much stuff in the back. I'm a big believer in calling a lot of stuff in the ring. In today's world, you do have to talk a bit in the back, but Sting trusted me and he trusted Cash. Punk trusted me and he trusted Cash, Darby as well. And they allowed us to call that match in the ring. And I love it. It's one of my favorite matches of my career.
You talked about this a little bit on our little teaser show. You talked about how you don't rehearse matches, how, even recently, that great match you had with Mike Speedball Bailey, you guys talked about it beforehand, and you're like, no, I don't rehearse matches. Mm-hmm. You talked about how Cody Rhodes had the misunderstanding that you guys rehearsed matches, and that it's not something that you do. Is that more and more of a lost art? Like, what's the percentage of people that would rather rehearse in the back than call it in the ring at this point in time, the people that you wrestle?
Honestly, it's 9 out of 10 guys. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. Please don't have that misconception of what I'm saying. I don't think it's wrong. That's just how I operate. Because these, like, man, if I were Ray Phoenix or if I were Nick Jackson, I'd call almost everything in the back because they are so incredible at the abilities that they have, right? Me, on the other hand, the only thing I'm really good at is locking up, punching, kicking, and being intense. And I like to think telling stories too. And so the way I structure my matches are not around moves; they're around the drama and they're around emotion. And so, I can't fully feel how the crowd is reacting if I have a complete A to Z plan to going out there to.
Right.
So that's just not how I operate. Again, like I said, that doesn't make my way right or wrong. That's just how I operate.
Now, at this time where you're wrestling with, this tag team match with CM Punk, is your personal relationship starting to develop now where you're starting to become people that you would consider friends? Or was it a slow thing? Was it a fast thing? How did the relationship develop?
Yeah. At the time, I wouldn't say we were, maybe we were friends, more of acquaintances. We talked and had fun and, hung out together, but never really went out to dinner or things like that. I think we really connected after the first match he and I had together. At this point, we were very cordial, like I said, have fun together. He was always sitting in the talent viewing area, and I would always, sit by him and we'd talk, and we would talk about matches that are going on, what we would do different, what we liked. And then people would come up to him or come up to me and ask for critiques, and we'd give them to him. He and I even went to around this same time, we went to a dark taping. We went to a dark taping that we weren't booked on, but we just wanted to go and watch the matches and be around the guys and the girls. And man, that was one of the most humbling experiences of my life, because he and I sat there and we watched the matches, and we had so many people come up and ask us to either watch their match and critique them afterwards, or just come up and said, "Hey, did you see anything wrong?" And, sorry, Punk, but a lot more people asked me than they asked him that night. Maybe because they were, because they were intimidated by him.
Maybe.
But yeah, man, that's again, that speaks to the kind of person he was and how much he loved the business. Loves the business.
There's been talk, some disputed, some not, and some just rumors, that you've got all these guys in AEW with this wealth of knowledge in the back. You got Arn Anderson was around, Tully Blanchard was around, William Regal's around, Jim Ross, a lot of older people, and that the younger wrestlers aren't taking advantage of that. They're not listening. You told me a story a long time ago about Ricky Morton visiting developmental, where people didn't listen, or they weren't showing him. They weren't like walking over going, "God dang, Ricky Morton, tell me how to get people to cheer for me, because that's what you're kind of the best at ever."
And I broke down and cried. Yep.
Is that a problem in AEW where the young wrestlers are already TV stars, so they feel maybe they don't need to improve their craft by going to a William Regal or going to a Tully Blanchard? Like, how could you be a heel and not go up to Tully Blanchard and ask for advice, right?
He's the greatest working heel of all time. There's no one. I mean, him, in my opinion, him and Fit Finlay, the two greatest working heels in wrestling in the last 40 years. Wow. But I don't want to say it's a problem, because I don't really, honestly, I don't think that the guys think, "Oh, I'm a big TV star, I don't need to get, I don't need to get any kind of affirmation from them." I think what it is the culture now, not just in AEW, in the world. And I think people don't like to be told you're wrong. And I don't think people like when other people are slightly abrasive to them and how they explain things. And so if someone went up to Tully Blanchard and say, "Hey, did you watch my match?" "Yeah." "What'd you think?" "Well, I thought the match sucked." Tully would say that, Tully wouldn't sugarcoat anything. And so I think that they're afraid of that. And, listen, I've been there where I've been intimidated to go up to a Tully Blanchard, to go up to an Arn Anderson, who and he is an incredible human being, and he'll talk to anybody in a second. But I was Jake the Snake Roberts, same thing. I was intimidated because these are the guys that I looked up to.
Sure.
So I was afraid of going up to them and saying the wrong thing.
Right.
So I don't know if I don't know what goes through their head. if they do think yeah, I've already made it, then they're fucking wrong and they're fucking stupid. But if they're saying, oh man, I'm kind of where I don't want to bother him, or I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid of what he'll say. I get that. I understand that. But there's got to come a time where you come out of that shell, because if you don't, you're never going to get better. Because like I said on a teaser, our generation didn't have the benefit of working with a certain group of guys. There were just a few, and that was like Sean and Taker and Hunter, that lasted for a little while, but none of our generation got to work with them.
Right.
And so the only way we can learn is by asking. There are no more road trips, really, especially with guys like, you hear the great stories about riding with Harley Race, or, riding down the mid-Atlantic roads with Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette in the back, and listening to Dennis Condrey explain psychology. Like those days are gone. So you have to come out of your shell, and you have to ask these people who have done something in this business, how, why, what they need to do, and that's the only way you're going to get better.
Any chance you could highlight, I don't want to just get on the negative, let's get on the positive. Any chance you could highlight a young wrestler in AEW who is hungry, who wants the knowledge, who's voracious, who's who has that respect and is going up to these guys and teach me, tell me more? Who is in that category?
Absolutely. Honestly, there's a ton of them. There's a lot more like that than there aren't. Preston Vance stays to the end of the show. I see so many young guys, I've seen it in WWE too, but so many young guys, and I see so many extra talent as well, leaving before the show is over, and it blows my mind. If you want to be the main event of the show, and you've been doing this for a cup of coffee, and you can't stay and watch the main event and see why they are the main event, right, you have no place in my business. But Preston Vance, he stays to the very end of the show. I don't mean just Dynamite. I mean, he stays through Rampage. He asks questions. He is front and center at the monitor. Let's see, Lee Johnson, another example of someone who wants to learn, asks advice. Top Flight as well. Both guys who have asked me multiple times to sit down and watch their matches. Anthony Bowens. Yeah, man, a slew of great guys. And then on top of that, Paul White, Mark Henry, they stay there and they watch to the end of the show.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And
respect.
Man, you're missing out. If you're a professional wrestler and you work for us, you're missing out.
It seems like Tony Khan has created a great atmosphere for those who wanted to learn. Yep. You've got Big Show, you got Mark Henry. Those are two guys, it's funny to mention, those are two guys who are legends, Hall of Famers, but two guys who had some rough beginnings in WWE where they actually got sent back down to OVW and had to come up. If I was a young wrestler, I think I would approach those guys. And so you're saying any kind of notion that AEW has a problem with young wrestlers not approaching older wrestlers outside of the problem we have in society is kind of an overblown thing?
I think it's a societal. Is that right? Is that a word?
That is the word, societal.
There we go.
Is the word of the day on the FTR podcast.
I think that's a societal thing. I just think it's just human nature now. But we, as older people, and even people who sit on the outside, who probably still do the same thing at their jobs, we sit on the outside and we can't believe it. I cannot fathom being a young wrestler, being an older wrestler in the business, and seeing Jake the Snake Roberts in my locker room at talent viewing and not going up and saying, please tell me about psychology. Please explain to me wrestling psychology.
Besides, of course, your cousin, Corey Ryan Forster, who's probably my best friend. Besides him, my favorite podcast co-host was a guy who was a wrestler, and we interviewed Tully Blanchard. He'd never seen a Tully Blanchard match.
Wow.
And I said, hey, man, let's watch these matches. And my friend, my co-host, whose name will go nameless, his name's Robert Stone, Robbie E.
Oh my God.
And I love Robbie, but I was like, dude, watch how Tully watch like 5 matches and watch what he does with slapping people in the face. He does it different every single time. Sometimes he'll slap you in the face. Sometimes he'll act like he's shaking your hand. Sometimes he'll shake your hand and then slap you in the face later. All those kind of things are those little things that make the difference in a wrestler, right?
Well, a wrestler, but yes, a working heel too. Tully would take a turnbuckle a different way.
What do you mean by
every
working
time.
heel? Can you describe working heel versus heel?
Yeah, okay. So, like for example, Roddy Piper, maybe the greatest heel of all time, but he was a great heel because he was a great worker. Don't get me wrong, but the majority of his work came on the mic.
Sure.
And so what I mean by working heel is someone who gets inside the four corners and works for their heat. Roddy would get on the mic and he could get his heat through the mic. He could also get his heat in the ring, but for the majority, he was on the mic. Tully got his heat in the ring and he told his story. And that's what I mean by working heels. So that's why I said him and Fit Finlay. Finlay never was a mic guy, never got on the mic to get heat. Tully did. But a working heel, that's what I mean by working heel. And so Tully would take these bumps, like he would hit the turnbuckles differently. He would take if you gave him a back elbow, some days he would take a face bump off of that. Some days he would take a snap back bump. Some days he would take it and crumble, but he would just make it so different. But there's an art in selling and working like a heel. And there's a different art in working and selling like a baby face, and Tully knew the difference. And that's, man, I could talk for hours about how great he was.
Me too. And God bless him. When you run into him now, he will say, I never said I quit. Like to this day.
Oh yeah.
He never quit.
Dude, one of the biggest issues I had with him, not even an issue, but kind of an issue that I had with him as a manager, is he would never, ever, ever say me and Cash were the greatest tag team of all time. Never. Because in his mind, rightfully so, he believes him and Arn are the greatest tag team of all time.
Okay.
So he would never ever put us over to that extent.
Well, because another funny Tully Blanchard story. I remember I was backstage at I think it was All In or the second one, but it was at Starcast, and there's like a buffet table, and Mercedes Martinez is there, and someone goes, "How long have you been wrestling?" And she's something like 18 years, and from across the room, Tully's like, "Hell, I only wrestled 12 or something like that." It was, with Tully, to continue just a second, that's where you got the slingshot sit-out powerbomb. Is that right? Is that a Tully Blanchard-inspired move?
Yeah. He did the slingshot suplex, and so I just wanted to make it my own because I loved the move. But yeah, that's where I got it from.
That's a move that a lot of people struggle with. What's the secret to getting your legs out on that sit-out powerbomb the way you do? Because a lot of people do it and can't do it like you do. Is it just a natural thing? Do you practice it? Do you have a technique for making sure it looks as good as it does?
No, yeah, I've never thought about that. No clue. Never practiced it before I did it. I think maybe the first time I did it was with Nick Jackson in our first Bucks match. But no, I've never practiced the move beforehand. I don't know. I've never thought about it at all. I just do it. No idea. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. In talking to wrestlers, a lot of times you get that answer. I talked to Jake Roberts once about his promo against Ted DiBiase, where, the
WrestleMania.
You wallow in the pit of your own avarice, that one?
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, how do you do that? As a creative person, how do you do that? He's like, shit just comes out, man. I don't know. He's just like, he's like, shit just comes out. So back to CM Punk. Of course, that's what this topic's about. We want to thank everybody for listening to the show. Of course, it's the first episode of FTR with Dax Harwood. You had the 6-man match. You mentioned something about that, about Punk knew you'd take care of him. Sting knew you'd take care of him. Mm-hmm. What does that mean, and how does that change when it comes to someone like CM Punk and also someone like Sting, who we all saw, have some issues in that match with Seth Rollins a few years ago? What is it? Not to say that Seth Rollins didn't take care of him, but to say, what does that mean when that's your responsibility? What does that mean to you?
So for me, obviously they know Cash and I are professionals and we're going to take care of them in the ring physically. But Sting knows, he knew and trusted and respected me and Cash enough to understand that we weren't going to go out there and call something that he in his mind was physically incapable of doing. We would do everything we could to make him look like he was 1991 Sting. As far as trusting us, they also knew that I think that Cash and I are the most, and obviously this sounds like a pat on the back, but I think we're the most unselfish wrestlers in the world today. I think that's also why it took so long for people to to recognize our talents, because
Right.
we would always, like, you watch those, man, please watch those American Alpha matches back.
Oh.
We gave, and I say this with the utmost respect, because these guys are still green at the time, and you could ask them, and I promise you they'll tell you the same thing. We gave Jason Jordan and Chad Gable all their moves. We gave them all those spots, and we highlighted them, because we knew if we made the people love them this much, the people would not love us this much. The days of fans hating a heel are gone, long gone. Okay. For like legit blood thirsty hating somebody, they're gone. But you can make your baby face be so beloved that the people in turn not love you. And we did that for so long, man. Up until this year, we did that. And I think that's why it took so long for people to figure that out, because we were never selfish. We were never, we got to get this move in. Never, 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 never did we ever say that. Have we ever said that? In 9 years together, we've never said that. And so they knew we were unselfish, and they knew we would take care of them. They knew we would highlight them. They knew we would also be physical with them, and we would highlight ourselves and get the heat that we needed to make that comeback mean something. When the finish came, which is a finish that I pitched, they knew it would get the biggest reaction, and it did.
How are you feeling at the beginning of 2022 about where you were as a tag team?
Optimistic, I think. Like I said, Cash and I had a long conversation, after my anxiety attack, and after his arm getting ripped open by the turnbuckle. We had this long conversation that if we weren't enjoying what we were doing, there was no reason in doing it. And so we decided that for the last year or whatever on our contract, we were going to enjoy what we do. And if we didn't feel like he was using us to our maximum potential, we weren't going to worry about it. We weren't going to complain about it. We were just going to have fun. And when he gave us something, we would kill it. That was our mindset going into 2022.
Creating the greatest opportunities for you to have long-term success. WWE, especially actually the whole run, it seemed like stop and start. And in AEW, it doesn't seem like there's a long-term plan for you guys, for instance. Is that a frustrating thing for you? Do you think there could be better long-term booking in general in the industry, and specifically towards you guys in both of those cases?
As an artist, of course I think that. As a wrestler, of course I think that. But that's as a wrestler. I had to sit back and look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is the company making money, and the number one revenue source for the company is TV. And so when you're working TV, you've got a lot of masters you've got to serve. That's AEW and WWE. You have to hit a certain, demographic, or you want to keep the ratings up, or the TV, the station. Do they call them TV stations anymore? I don't know.
I think so.
I guess so. Yeah.
Network, maybe.
Yeah. The network. There we go. That's a better term. The network wants something, and you have to give it to them because they're the one providing all this money. So taking a step back and looking at that, I understood. Now, I can't say there were times where I still didn't get frustrated. That's going to happen, and that'll continue to happen till the end of my life, I'm sure. But that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. There are a lot of different masters to serve in this industry that go far beyond just the 20, 30, 40 minutes you get in the ring.
March 23rd, 2022. I'm sorry. I don't want to skip over this. This was the best thing ever. I texted you after this match. I'm like, holy shit, bro. This was it. I loved it so much. Everything wrestling should be in so many ways, which was February 9th, 2022. CM Punk and Jon Moxley defeat Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood on AEW Dynamite. Fun match, fun finish, fun everything. The crowd on their feet. Just amazing situation. Talk about how that match came to be.
I don't know. I came to the building that day, and we were told it was going to be either CM Punk and Bryan Danielson against myself and Cash, or CM Punk and Jon Moxley against me and Cash. And then we found out it was Mox. Never did the four of us have a set plan, a set idea of exactly how that match was going to go. Again, they trusted us and allowed the heels to call the match. obviously with input from them too, but we never had a set plan. Well, there was never a time where we said, okay, after this, we'll do this. After this, we're going to do this, and then we'll go into the finish here. Never once did we do that. We were walking to the ring, still throwing out ideas. And it just came together beautifully. 4 guys who wanted to work hard, 4 guys who wanted to be the best wrestler in that ring that night, and that's when I think magic happens, is when 4 unselfish guys are in a ring and they're trying to be the best, and they're also trying to outsell each other. And I think that match was just that was the beginning of our upward momentum for 2022.
Right.
But I love that match. It's also the match that I tore my labrum from my hip to my groin.
Right.
And I took the doomsday device and landed on my knee. If you watch it back, when I landed on my knee, it jarred my hip back, and I grabbed my balls because I, honest to God, thought my right ball had exploded. That's how bad it was. And so that was one of the injuries that have lingered on a little bit.
Well, the one thing we don't want, folks, is an exploding ball.
We don't.
That is the last thing we want. What are your memories of that match? And besides, of course, the injury and just the reaction and how it all came together. I know you talked about it just a little bit just now, but as far as everything just kind of working, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, the atmosphere afterwards was incredible. The atmosphere during the match was incredible. But, I never... for example, I worked with Jericho in a singles match with Mike Tyson, and I went to that match thinking, I don't care if he's Chris Jericho. I don't care if he's been working 30 years. I don't care if he's a multi-time world champion. Tonight, he's in my ring, and I'm going to show him why he's in my ring. I came with the same attitude with those guys. John Moxley, CM Punk, 2 of the biggest stars in wrestling history, didn't bother me at all. But afterwards, it was very cool to me because they're in the positions that I want to be in as far as wrestling goes. They're in the light that I want to be seen in. But it was very cool to me afterwards how proud both of them were of that match. Moxley, who's not a very big talker, doesn't put very many guys over. He was very vocal about how much he loved the match, and he couldn't stop talking about it. Punk got all 4 of us together and referee Aubrey, and we all took a picture together because he loved the match so much. And I was sitting on the doctor's table with that picture, in that picture, which I will send to you. Maybe you can put out on our Twitter feed.
Let's make sure to put that out for the show. Yeah, let's get that picture. That's great.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the doctor's table, making sure my ball isn't busted, and those guys came in and they were just so proud, man, and that in turn made me proud.
And what a great compliment that is to you. Having guys like that be so happy they had a good match with you.
For sure.
You said John Moxley doesn't talk a lot. Of course, you shared some time with him in WWE. Tell us a little bit about what John Moxley's like. Of course, this last year for him has been a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. What is John Moxley like to work with?
Well, that was the only time I've ever worked with him, and it was very easy. I loved it. I politicked so much to Tony to allow he and I to work towards the end of the year because I wanted to have who is the better wrestler in 2022. And I worked very hard. Just some circumstances got in the way. That never happened. But the one experience I had with him in the ring, I absolutely loved it. And I hope 2023 brings forth a match for he and I.
How much stock do you put in that? I know you put a lot of pride in that, but how much stock do you put in this talk of Dax Harwood being the best wrestler of the year? Because you've had 3 of the greatest tag team matches, maybe even more. God damn, what a year of all time, right? At the same time, you captured the most disparate titles in the history of wrestling from Mexico, Japan, and Ring of Honor. You had singles matches with some of the greatest, well-received, gigantically well-received singles matches with some of the greatest wrestlers in the world, from CM Punk to Will Ospreay. Like, what the hell? But you've mentioned to me, man, the win-loss record. How does that matter in factoring to you where you think, wow, I really may have had one of the best years in wrestling this year?
Yeah, the win-loss record doesn't, whatever. I mean, I'm going to win, I'm going to lose. That obviously
doesn't matter at all.
No. I think it does.
Okay.
I absolutely think it does, because there's going to come a time where the fans just stop believing in you if you always lose. So, Road Dogg saying that wins and losses don't matter. Well, that's just something that Vince told him. He regurgitated. Sorry about that, Road Dogg. No, not really. But if you just keep losing on TV over and over and over again, there's going to come a time when the people stop believing in you. Whether they love you or not, they're going to stop believing in you. That you just don't have a chance to win. So I can't say that there's nothing to that, but it never once bothered me. I never once was bummed out because I wasn't winning. More often than not, I'm the one who pitched to lose. Man, this is killing the magic, but I guess that's why we do this again. Every match that I have tapped out to, I wanted to tap out because of a couple of reasons. Some guys I heard complaining in the back about tapping out, but two, I knew that the story that I told in each of these matches that I tapped out in, I could make these people feel sorry for me, and they would have sympathy for me, which in turn would make them love me even more. Right. Because there have been everyone, they don't want to admit it, but everybody in their life has given up on something, and they're not proud of it. But when someone on national TV in front of millions of people fights their ass off, man, and gives it everything they got, and then they give up, they're like, yeah, I've been there. I get
right,
that.
Right.
So they understand that. But as far as 2022, I take a lot of stock in people because those are the people that pay my bills. And I think that's why it makes me so emotional when I see and hear the reception we get, because these people, they fucking love us, man. They do. They care about us. We're two fucking one ugly ass muffin top 5'10" Southerner, bald ass head, shitty ass mustache, and they love me for some reason. I don't know why. I don't want to question them. I don't want to find out why, because it may not be the reason I want to know, but they love us, man, and they shouldn't, but they do. And I'm just so proud of that. So yes, I take a lot of stock in them, the fans, calling me Wrestler of the Year or saying I'm a contender for Wrestler of the Year. And then I take a shit ton of stock when Bret Hart texts me or CM Punk texts me or Jim Ross makes mention, or Dennis Condrey texts me, all these people that I've looked up to for years and years and years, when they say these things about me, like I take a lot of stock and a lot of pride in that.
Well, we've led up to a couple moments, and this is one of them. It's March 23rd, 2022, AEW Dynamite. CM Punk defeats Dax Harwood. Let's talk about that match a little bit. Mm-hmm. These kind of have the same answers when I say how this match came about, and you're like, well, I found out about it. Yeah. If this doesn't have a different origin story, talk about that match a little bit and how much, what was your experience wrestling one-on-one against CM Punk? Something a year before you would have been like, impossible.
Yeah. So I got off a plane, took an Uber to Starbucks, brought my bags and my luggage into Starbucks with me, ordered my coffee, and I was waiting for my order, and CM Punk walked in, and CM Punk also ordered a coffee at Starbucks. Big surprise. And we started talking. He said, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Man, I have no idea. I don't know." He said, I don't think I'm doing anything either. You want to wrestle tonight?" And we had joked about it before and like, yeah, we want to do this. And I was like, of course, dude, but don't tease me, whatever. And so we sat and had coffee, and we'd thrown around the idea of working together and just talked about shit or whatever. And then I get a text later that night and said, "We're first tonight. I hope you're ready, because I'm ready and I'm very excited." And from right then, I was ready to go. I knew the finish of the match that I wanted. I knew I wanted to tap out to the Anaconda Vice, because I knew after I tapped out, I was going to sit on my ass and look up and shake my head, because everyone's done that in their life where they failed. They've failed in life or failed at something, and then sat there and said, "Man, I worked so hard and I still failed. That's not fair." Because it's not fair when you work that hard in life, but you still fail. It's not fair, but it happens to all of us. And you know what we do? We get back up and we fucking keep going. And that's what I wanted to portray in that match.
And that's something we've learned, in the last 20 years or so, with the advent of MMA and UFC, is that anybody can get caught. It's unrealistic to stay in a hold for like 5 minutes when everybody's seen the greatest fighters in the world tap out of these things. So it might be a little antiquated notion that people shouldn't tap out, right?
Yes, I think that's, I think the people that don't want to tap out are people who've never been in a real fight before. That's my opinion. I've been in a real fight before. I've got the chipped teeth to prove it.
Yeah.
I got the lazy eye to prove it as well. And I've lost a lot of fights, and it's embarrassing, but it happens. So, I don't understand not wanting to tap out. I don't get it. But again, this match, I knew that the story I was going to tell, I could make the people feel a certain way for me. And that at that time, I felt the winds of change with FTR. I felt the people starting to feel a different way about us. And there was a time where I talked to Cash and I was like, hey, what do you think about maybe turning babyface? He's like, I don't know. What do you think? And I said, well, I think these people respect us. And I think they respect us so much that they don't want to boo us, but they know as heels, they're not really supposed to cheer us.
Right.
So our matches are kind of like at a lull. Even though they love the matches and they come up for the spots that we want them to, our matches are a lull, especially like when we come out. And so I knew at that match from then on, that was the origins of us turning babyface.
It's what you talked about earlier. You said, we're past the point of heels being hated. Truly hated, because what happens, it happened to Max recently, a little bit, is that you get so good at it that fans appreciate it and they want to cheer for you. And with you guys, the matches got better and better and better. And people, man, you guys might be one of the first tag teams or acts to get that over with the audience based entirely on respect. Yeah. It's a unique situation, is it not?
Yeah, and I think it was I'm not comparing us to him, but I think the same with Flair. At a point in his career, they just respected him so much. Didn't matter if he was a babyface or a heel. In 1997, they were going to cheer Ric Flair. The WCW fans were going to cheer him regardless. And so I think it was kind of like that. I'm very proud of that.
So we're going to get to what everybody wants to talk about, and we're going to start with AEW Double or Nothing 2022 and May 29th. CM Punk had a match against Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page. Previous to that, there was a promo that everybody talked about where Adam Page said something to the effects of, CM Punk, I'm not here to beat you. I'm here to rescue the company from you. It didn't raise a lot of eyebrows in the fan world, but apparently it raised CM Punk's eyebrows. What were your thoughts? What was your reaction? Did you have a reaction to that promo by Adam Page?
No, after the promo segment, I went up to Punk and I said, man, that was really good. That was a great segment because they got the fans to react. And it's hard sometimes to get the fans to react that way to a babyface match. So I was, I thought it was a great segment. And he was like, I'm kind of feeling a certain way about it. And I had no inkling that anything went wrong or went sideways or anything like that.
And is that something you've known Adam Page a long time? Is that something that would be unusual for Adam Page? Would be to take real feelings and shoot on somebody or whatever you want to say in the ring like that?
So to be honest, I don't really know Adam Page very well. I mean, we worked together once on the North Carolina Indies. I don't know him very well, but I don't think so. I didn't think so. I didn't have that notion of him. He's a family man. He loves his wife. He has, he's got a newborn kid or maybe one on the way or something. But yeah, he's always pleasant, always polite to me. We always talk and we get along. And even after, the disagreements we've had with the Young Bucks, he and I have always talked and got along great.
Sure. And that's most people's experience with Adam Page. And you said Punk said he's feeling a certain way. And apparently that grew and grew. And he gets injured. He injures his foot jumping into the crowd. And but before that, we had the debut. And the debut and the one time only CM FTR 6-man tag team, trios team, Cash Wheeler, Dax Harwood, and CM Punk took on the Guns and Max Caster. Talk a little bit about that.
The debut and the demise all in one night. Yeah, very excited. Tony Khan's talked about it, where he said, there were a lot of plans put in place for us and Punk, and we were very excited about those plans. It was, I think Punk was maybe going to work with Tanahashi at the pay-per-view, and we were going to go from there with Punk and the trios, with the trio that we had, not in the trios tournament, but we were going to work with Punk, and he and Tony had laid out some of the plans for us, not all of them, but we were just very excited to get to work with our best bud Punk, because we knew it would show on screen. And that one match, yeah, the very first thing he did, jumped out into the crowd. He broke a bone in his foot, and obviously hindered him through the match. But it could have been something great.
You said our best bud Punk. So at this time, you guys have become friends, good friends.
Oh yeah,
this is something. This is your buddy. This is someone you want to work with. You have mutual respect. Mm-hmm. Did you get any idea that the worm was turning as far as his attitude towards AEW or the EVPs or anything like that? There was no indication to you at all that, man, this thing is souring and I need to rescue it. Nothing like that at all.
On our teaser episode, I told you I would never lie to our fans, to the fans of FTR. I'm not lying when I say no. Not at all. Punk was still so joyous. He was so happy to be in the wrestling business. And to be honest, he told me he never, when they were going to put the belt on him, he didn't want the belt. He said, I just want to have fun. But he understood that Tony putting the belt on him again would put AEW in a new and a better light. So he took it begrudgingly a little bit, but he took it. He took the belt. And but at the time, man, he was taking me, Cash, Max, Wardlow, man, so many other guys who I'm missing so many other guys, but he was taking us out, Hobbs, taking us out to eat, taking us out to dinner, always paying for it, inviting my wife to come along. She came along, and my daughter. He would always take us to the nice restaurants, and he was paying for it, not just me, but to all the people. And he was like, he might not want me to tell you this, but I'll take the heat if he doesn't. But like, he bought all the girls in the locker room Starbucks gift cards and had one of the girls hand them out anonymously. It didn't say who they were from, but it was from him, just because he loved the atmosphere and he loved being there. And he also loved the work that the girls were putting in. He thought they were busting their ass to try to get the attention that WWE's women division was getting.
Well, if we've learned nothing at all this podcast episode of the first episode, we've learned that it pays to be a Starbucks near CM Punk's house, because he's getting some gift certificates. So it's been, let's get to it, what they call Brawl Out and All Out, September 4th, 2022. According to reports, you and some other people were not around in the building. You were out having your beloved tequila with some friends, and everything went down. It just all went to hell. Just what did you hear first? Did you see the press conference first? Did you hear the news first? Did you hear, what was the first thing you heard where you're like, oh shit?
So funny enough, that night I had brought a huge bottle of Woodford Reserve. I bought a big bottle of Clase Azul. And there was one other drink that someone else brought, and we had it there for after our matches for that pay-per-view. And all the boys in the male locker room were drinking and having a good time, and we were hugging. I have a picture of me and Jay Lethal laying on the ground together, just laughing our ass off because we were just having so much fun. I had my wife and my daughter there with me. Cash had his girlfriend with him. It was just such a great time. And so, of course, as soon as my match is over, I shower up and, like I said, we had a couple of drinks with the guys real quick, grabbed my girls, and we headed back to the hotel.
Sure.
I was laying in the bed, and I got a text from one of the wrestlers and said, "Is this shit true?" I had no idea what he was talking about. And Then right after that, I got a call from my buddy CM Punk, and he told me what happened. And I was like, you're lying to me, dude. There's no way that happened. He said, no. And he was covered in blood from the match.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
you're like, stop fucking with me, dude.
Yeah. He
this is
FaceTimed
ridiculous.
me. Yeah. He FaceTimed me. I was laying in bed with my wife. My daughter was in the pull-out sofa bed.
And this was the next day? This was
No. This was that night.
That night, CM Punk FaceTimes you.
Yeah. And he just said, hey, I just want to let you know you're going to hear some things, but I wanted you to hear it from me. This is what happened. And I was like, dude, are you okay? Do you need me? I'll come right now to help you out, or, get you cleaned up, or whatever. He said, no, everything's fine. It's, it's died down. We're good. So that's when I first heard about it.
And it's a tough question to ask, but you've seen a lot of reports. You've heard a lot of reports. You've talked to your friend CM Punk. Is there a lot of accuracy in the reporting of what happened, or is there a story that is totally different that you know of than what people know?
So obviously I wasn't there, right? So who I perceive to be God is the only person who really, really, really knows the truth. Sure. Because everyone's going to have their own version in their head, because we've all done it before, where we've made up what we perceive to be the truth, what I've heard that is reported, there are elements of truth in it. But then there are also some things that are like that raise a red flag to me. Like, man, it seems like we're only getting, like a portion of the story, or what this journalist wants to put out. Right. Whether he has a bias, or whether he has a grudge against one of the other parties. That's just how I felt. But I also knew that I didn't know the whole story. I'm smart enough to know that there's the truth, and what is the saying? There's an opinion. What is it?
Is it your side, my side, and the truth? Or
something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that. But I also felt that the stories that I'd heard from a few people, I don't feel like they would blatantly lie to me. So, I do think there are bits of truth, but I also believe that some of the fans have read too much into it. And I think that they should let it have happened, and let it die down. Because, when it's all said and done, I can't tell you that I know 100% of the truth. So I can't tell you if the journalists that are reporting it is 100% of the truth. I know what I perceive to be the truth. And from the things that I've read and heard, there's partial truth, and there's partial things that are a bit exaggerated.
This has been the first episode of FTR with Dax Harwood. We are coming to a close. Of course, you can follow us over on Twitter, @FTR with Dax. And if you want to know how to subscribe, go ahead and go to FTRwithDax.com. And we're going to close out with one more question. And it's a kind of a question that everybody has. Do you think CM Punk is coming back to wrestle, or do you think his days are done? And is your belief that his future with AEW finished?
Man, loaded questions. I can't tell you any of the answers. I can tell you what I hope, and that's all I can tell you. Because I don't know. I don't know. There's, everyone knows about the legalities of the situation. And so no one's really expressing what is going to happen, what has happened, and what won't happen. But I can tell you, all I can tell you, and all I can be truthful about, just like with the brawl out, I can only tell you what I know and what I perceive to know. That's all. All I know is that I hope that he comes back. All I know is I feel that AEW, I feel AEW should have the Young Bucks in their locker room. I know that I feel AEW should have Kenny Omega in that locker room. And I know that I feel AEW should have CM Punk in that locker room. Because with those 4 entities in the locker room, it makes our talent roster so much deeper. And it makes our talent roster so much better. And it's 4 guys who want to be the best. I know that. Regardless what any of us think personally, I know that we all want to be the best. And I know we all want the best for professional wrestling because it's given us a life that we could never have otherwise. Like, I know the Young Bucks have a beautiful family, and I know their kids, and they're so incredible. They're such incredible kids. I know Matt's wife. What a great woman,
Sure.
And he's allowed to give his family this lifestyle because of professional wrestling. And I know he knows that. And I know he's so proud of that. Kenny doesn't have a wife and kids, but I know that he's proud of the fact that professional wrestling has given him this life. And I know that they all know they owe it to professional wrestling. They owe it to professional wrestling. They owe it to be great. And they owe it to give something back great. Same thing with Punk. He doesn't have kids, but he's got a beautiful wife. He's got an incredible life, and he's very fortunate to have saved his money and made the money he's made. And he's made it because of professional wrestling. And I know he knows that. And I know he knows he owes it to professional wrestling to give back to it. And this is my plea to all 4 guys, is to please find a way to make it work. Because if we can make it work, man, we can set up the future of professional wrestling for a long time, and we can change the course of professional wrestling for a very long time. Because when you think about it unselfishly, we're doing this for 20 years down the road, for 30 years down the road, so the guys and girls can make a living. And so, 30 years from now, when someone has their own Finley, or someone has their own Maria, they can be proud that they are taking care of their family through something they absolutely love. And we're giving them that option. That's the whole reason that Ricky Morton and Dusty Rhodes and Dennis Condrey and all these guys rode the roads for hundreds and hundreds of miles a day. They rode those roads and paved those roads for us. So today I can go to work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, at the most 3 days a week. And I can still provide and feed for my family. And I do it because of wrestling. And that's why I know I owe wrestling so much. And I love it so much. Because without it, I don't have any of this. And without the fans, dude, without them, none of us have anything. And so that's my plea to all 4 guys.
We can't beat that. This has been FTR with Dax Harwood. Well, like we said, it is not a gimmick. Dax needs to go. He needs to go ahead and put that daughter of his to bed, spend a little bit of time with his family. But what a great first episode it was. We want to thank everybody for listening, everybody for supporting us. Spread the word. Leave a 5-star review if you think we deserve it. Go ahead and see everything we're doing at ftrwithdax.com. You can follow us on our very active Twitter at FTRWithDax. And go ahead and give Dax a follow at DaxFTR or me at Matt Coon Music. Of course, this is just the first episode, and we're going to go ahead and do a poll for future episodes, but we wanted to come out with a bang with CM Punk, and then for a second episode, we're going to do what everybody has been talking about this year, what many consider the greatest trilogy of tag team matches ever. It's the Briscoes versus FTR next week on FTR with Dax Harwood.
Tore it down, waiting on them, but they're here now. Here they come to burn the town. Like Henry and Double A, they'll send your soul to judgment day. Respect the past and what it say. You better move